There we go. That's better. Now you can probably hear me. Hello everybody and welcome to the Curiosity Orbit for February 2026. I know I missed January, but I wasn't home at the beginning of January, so I decided instead of trying to do something halfway, I would rather just skip January. So that also means that I've been stacking up some news and things that's been happening now over the last 2 months actually for inside the astronomy and astrophotography community. And today, in the next hour or so, we're gonna be running through. Okay, we're gonna be running through all the things that I decided to pull out and have a look at today. Okay, as always, just before we dive into to all the news, I completely forgot. I need to. Oh my god. It's been so long since I've done this. I need to go and say thank you to a few people because we got a number of new members on the channel. Let me go and just look that up real quick. I should have prepared that beforehand. Oh my god, memberships. Here we go. I think we have... let me just pull this over here so I can actually see what's going on. Wow, how on earth am I going to pronounce that? Wardy Walshore, I think. Thanks a lot for becoming a member. And also just a few days ago, we also got Dan Morgan has also become a member. So thanks to both of you guys for becoming a member of the channel and supporting the channel directly. As you know, if you've been watching the channel, of course, I try to keep sponsored like integrations out of the video, so you won't see me like do a shout out in a video to a specific brand. If I do sponsored content, I only do complete sponsored videos because I feel like it's more natural that way instead of having to do these annoying segments. So I'm trying to avoid that. So that also means, of course, like foregoing a lot of income on the channel. So if you want to support the channel, you can either become a member. There's also the merch store where you can buy my book, The Cosmic Field Guide, also merchandise and stuff like that. But enough of that. It's time to talk about some news. And we're going to jump right in here with SpaceX, which has applied for permission to launch up to 1 million satellites into orbit. That is a lot. That's a lot of satellites, and it could cause a problem. So the idea apparently is that Musk and SpaceX seems to think that one of the most economical ways or most energy efficient or cost and energy efficient ways is to put data centers into orbit. That will ruin the night sky. You're right, absolutely. I'm gonna come back to that in just a second. So the idea, of course, is that they say, hey, if it's a lot cheaper to put like a bunch of small satellites, I assume small satellites since 1 million is a lot. Gonna put a lot of small satellites into orbit with some compute power, and because that, of course, solar panels are a lot more efficient when you're outside the atmosphere, you get energy easier, and you can then use the same technology they use for of course their Starlink technology. That you basically you could connect to like that would be the closest actually thing you would have to some kind of cloud compute thing. So you basically have compute power in orbit, and you would be able to run some AI stuff on it. So they want to launch AIs into orbit, basically. What they're gonna do with the satellites, I don't really care, to be honest. The problem, of course, is that 1 million number. That's a bit of a concern. I actually did a video a while back on something called the Kessler syndrome, which some of you guys may know what is. Now, the Kessler syndrome is a predicted effect of the theoretical idea that there is a limit for how many things you can put into orbit. In the video, I showed this graph here that I made where we have the number of objects that we see in orbit around Earth. We can see here, of course, some these two increases that we see here were actually two satellite collisions. So that means what's happened is like number of objects, they keep growing, and all of a sudden, two objects, which is bound to happen, collide. And what happens when two objects in space collides is all of a sudden two objects becomes, you can see here this jump with like 5,000. So two satellites suddenly becomes 5,000 individual objects that now has their own orbit. And that just means that because you now have this debris field like scattered out across low Earth orbit, chances are that they are going to now hit other objects, and then those other objects are going to create 5,000 new objects, and then that's going to cause more collisions, and you're going to have this runaway effect where the entire low Earth orbit is just covered in debris, and you can't really get anything up there because everything would just be basically shattered by all this like destroyed stuff that's around here. And if you're wondering, this here is Starlink. So you can see here you have these two collisions. The reason why we actually see a decrease right after it is because this was in low Earth orbit, and there is a natural decay of objects in low Earth orbit. They are naturally going to re-enter back into the atmosphere. So that's why we begin to see a decay here. And the other decays we see around it is actually active programs where people try to declutter space. But of course, if we don't send up stuff, it is naturally going to decay. It's naturally going to re-enter the atmosphere, burned up, and get like, yeah, destroyed like that. This, what we see here, that is mainly Starlink. But notice here, again, this is data from I think 2025 or 2024, so it's a little old now. But back then, when I made this graph, we were tracking around 25,000 objects in orbit, in low Earth orbit. I think this is only low Earth orbit. Assuming if they're going to put AI stuff on it, they want to put it in low Earth orbit. But with 1 million satellites, you can see we are talking like 40-time increase in the number of objects we are already tracking today. And as Bonsa correctly said in chat, that's gonna pretty much ruin the night sky for us, especially if you're an astrophotographer, because if there's that much junk flying around up there, no matter what direction you're gonna be looking, it's just gonna be satellite trail hell. I know, like astrophotography, like processing programs have become a lot better at removing satellite trails with sigma rejections and stuff like that. But it's just still another thing that we need to deal with. That's maybe going to be a thing. One thing, though, I would point out, which is not really clear when you read the article, is they say they want to launch 1 million satellites. They didn't say at once. Because, as many of you will know, the whole business model around Starlink is that the satellites have a relatively short expected lifespan. They're basically just spamming low Earth orbit with cheap, basically disposable satellites. They're not meant to ever be repaired, and because it's not feasible to upgrade a fleet of tens of thousands of satellites, their business model is basically say, we launch them, we expect them to live for 5 years, then they're going to fall down, burn up, and then they're going to replace them. They're continuously replacing them with new ones, because as these satellites then naturally get replaced every 5 years, they also get the technology upgrades is automatically applied to it by continuously just keeping this alive and just letting the older ones naturally burn up in the atmosphere, which I'm sure is healthy, burning up all those satellites, because yeah, that's probably nice for the atmosphere. But anyway, that's the business model, and I assume when they say they're going to launch 1 million satellites, I don't think we're going to see 1 million satellites in orbit at the same time. This is probably that they say, hey, we want to do this. They're probably going to do the same thing, because if they're doing AI compute things, like compute power is going to be drastically improved over 5 years. So if they expect those satellites to have a 5-year lifespan, burn the AI satellites up in the atmosphere, launch new ones that are faster and better. I assume that's the plan. So I don't think we're going to see 1 million satellites in orbit at the same time. But still, for astrophotographers, if this graph continues, It's just going to be a growing issue. Okay, that was the space news. Let's go over to gear, and oh my god, there has been a ton of of gear releases, so I'm gonna be running through them relatively rapidly because there is a lot of new gear releases. First of all, while I've been gone since the last episode of this, ZW has launched, scroll up here, the C-Star S30 Pro, which of course is a upgrade over the traditional C-Star S30 Smart Telescope. We can see a picture of it here, and the keen-eyed of you will already have spotted a few differences. Mainly that there's now a second camera. It has two separate cameras on the front of it now, which is actually quite neat. It's quite similar design-wise to something like the Dwarf, which also features two separate sensors, as you can see here. There's of course the main sensor that you can see over here. That's the main sensor here, and you have a smaller one here that's then being used for active guiding. So this one is both a wide field, you can see a large area, but it's also the one that they're using for guiding, and then you have the bigger one over here with more glass, which is then of course the actual telephoto lens that they use for the imaging. And you can then put it into a control mode. Of course, you can do the same with the C-Star. But the idea, of course, is that you have two lenses, and then the wide field lens is running double duty. It can both, of course, function as an imaging lens for the wide field shots, but you can also use it as a guide sensor if you want to, if you put this into EQ mode, and then you just basically have active guiding now, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, but what do you get apart from that extra little sensor? What other interesting features do you get with the S30 Pro? Now, I think they actually had a comparison between the old and the new down here. Blah, blah, marketing, EQ mode, look at all the birds and tracking. Where is it? I had it. There it is. Here it is. Okay, so here they have a side-by-side view of what you get with the S30 Pro over the S30. Obviously, we get a bigger sensor. So bigger sensor, of course, means more light, bigger pixels, which is a very nice one. We can see here now we have the that wide field. Did the other one also have? I can see they actually have it here. I'm wondering if the other one also had two lenses. Telephoto of wide. Maybe it has two lenses, the old one too. I actually didn't know if they have. But you can see here the resolution, of course, has been doubled. So it went from a full HD sensor, and now we are at a full 4K sensor. So we get a lot more resolution. However, notice the field of view here has also pretty much doubled. Because yes, we do get more resolution, but you don't get finer resolution. You just get a wider field of view. So it's basically the same pixel size. So a pixel covers pretty much the same size of the night sky. You now just have a wider field of view. You do get, I think, a slightly smaller pixel size here, like angular size for each pixel. As we can see here that they do have a focal length equivalent. I'm not sure what they mean with equivalent focal length, but we do get slightly more focal length out of the Pro than we did with the other one. An extra element of glass in there, so we're probably gonna have a flatter, better edges on the pictures. And then they just mention a lot of features. It's basically software things that you get with the new ones that the other one didn't. NFC, of course, is a single new feature, which is a nice feature that you can just, the Dwarf has this too, where you can just basically hold your phone up to it, and then the phone will automatically pair to the telescope and stuff like that, so you don't have to fiddle around with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So you just like phone, plug up to the telescope, and then boom, it connects. Quite nice little thing. Show what they have in the package. So yeah, if you're into smart telescopes, new stuff, new toys on the market. We're just gonna have another smart telescope later on in the tonight, and it's a bit more expensive. I'm expecting that we're gonna see the S30 Pro being announced any day now. So it would be the natural next product for ZWO to come out with, that they're going to announce the S50 Pro, sorry. So that's probably going to be coming very, very soon. Now, sticking with ZWO, they have also announced the AM7 harmonic drive. So far we've had the, first we got the AM, was it 5 first or was it 3 first? I don't know. But we had the 3 and the 5 for quite a while. Then we got the 3 and 5N, which is the newer version, updated version of it with better hardware inside. But they now stepped it up and they made an AM7. Now what do we get with the AM7? Like, luckily they have a table that shows what it can do comparing to the other mounts. A lot of the stuff I'm just like going over because if you know the ZWO AM mount series, there's nothing super like new here. There's a few things I want to mention, but if you have seen the other ones, this is pretty much just the same but bigger, right? Power and data on the saddle, those kind of things. Very, very, very nice. Bluetooth control now, so that you actually don't need to have the data. The idea they're running with is that you want to be able to take your new fancy camera with a built-in ASI Air, connect via Bluetooth to the mount, and then you only have to run that single power cable out to it, and then that's it, right? That's the whole idea they're kind of working towards, going completely cableless, where the only cable you're running is power. Everything else is going to go wireless, right? You have seen this with their new focuses as well. They're running Bluetooth too, and they also the focuses even have built-in batteries now, so you charge up your focuser from home, and then you just connect everything over Bluetooth. Not sure if I'm on board with that direction, but it is a direction they're going. I can see their focuser right there. Oh, shit! I'm not showing my screen. Sorry. Yeah, we were talking about the there we go, the AM7. So you can see here, I'm showing this picture here, that they're going in the direction where they want to go completely wireless. As you can see here, they of course haven't shown the actual cables. There are no cables here, like the filter wheels have to have a cable. I don't think they made a Bluetooth one yet. But we wanted to look at the stats, and we have the stats for all the mounts here. Most of the stuff up here is not really super interesting. The only thing I think interesting, of course, is the load capacity, and it sits exactly where you would expect. That it just, with the AM3, it stopped at 13 kilograms max weight with counterweights. And then they went up to 15, starting without counterweights on the AM5, up to 20. And then it continues here that now the 7 can go up to 20 kilograms without, and then 30 kilograms with a counterweight. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see a AM9 at some point that's going to be able to go 30 kilograms, and then maybe 40 or 50 without counterweight. Something like that wouldn't surprise me too much. Other than that, there's not a lot to really notice here, other than the fact that in order to get that 30 kilogram listed load capacity with counterweights, they have to lower the distance from the rotation axis from 25 centimeters, which has been the default so far from ZWO, down to 20. So they're kind of doing a little bit of like a fiddlery, because all these max weights is, while it's an easy way for people to understand, saying, okay, I can put this many kilograms on it, essentially what they're measuring is torque, because that's what the mount is limited by. It's how much torque can it handle. And that torque, of course, the further away the weight is, so if you have a very wide telescope with a big aperture, so the weight is far away from the saddle, then you can handle less weight than compared if you have a small compact refractor where all the weight is sits close to the saddle. So that's why they're saying at 20 centimeters, and they had to go down to at 20 in order for it to actually get their target counter, or their target weight of 30 kilograms. So bit of a sneaky move there by ZWO, but at least they are listing it. I'm gonna give them credit for that, because a lot of companies don't. You can find that spec if you really begin to dig into most mounts user manuals, but listing it on their promotional material like this is not something that we see too often. yeah, everything else, it has a slightly bigger azimuth adjustment range, but everything else is temperature ranges, all that kind of stuff is the same. Oh yeah, bigger counterweight rod. I noticed that too. So we seem to get a bigger counterweight rod. You can't use the standard 20 millimeter counterweight rod. You have to go up to 25 on this one. Probably because bigger mount means more counterweight, so they want to have a bigger. Wow, what am I saying? Bigger counterweight rod so that it doesn't bend for that extra weight that you're gonna be putting on it. Okay, let me just quickly go and check something here before we move on to the next segment. Going here. Is everything in the green? Everything looks good. Okay, awesome. Let's move on and let's talk about the Sharp Star SCA 310. So, new telescope that's been launched here not too long ago. This is one of those that we begin to see pop up here over the last year-ish, year and a half, 2 years maybe. I think we really begin to see a lot of these large aperture, really, really fast. This isn't even that fast. It's only f3.8. I've seen them down to f2 something. Some of these, but you have these very large aperture, very, very short, stubby, extremely fast astrographers, and I'm all on board. I mean, I've never used one. I've actually never even watched a review of them. I can only imagine what a pain this thing must be to collimate. Now, they do know what kind of price they want for it. These things are not cheap. But this, of course, as it is a 310 millimeter aperture, I mean, it's a 12-inch aperture. That's a massive hole. So that can really collect some light. And this really, I mean, it is exactly what you expect. It's a short, stubby, they call it a Akashic grain. It's essentially closer to a Newtonian, apart from this because come out of the side, I guess. But yeah, carbon fiber tube. I actually have a really nice overview of it here. We can see here you have power and fan speed adjustment for cooling down that massive 12-inch main mirror. You of course have collimation screws on the front, and they haven't labeled it, but I would assume some of this stuff here is gonna be collimation screws for the. Oh, you don't actually. Do you collimate the main mirror on these? You probably don't actually. You probably only collimate the secondary. I don't know. But very nice, big rack and pinion focuser. There's really not a lot to say about it. It's a 12-inch f3.8 astrographer. And so if you have very deep pockets and you like your fast telescopes, here you go. I mean, the first time we saw these come out, they were really small, compact, small aperture, but really wide field, extremely fast, and I was really liking that. When we begin to go up to this 12 inches, we're up to a size now where even in a carbon tube, just that glass in there is going to be heavy. And we're beginning to get to a point where 12 inches, I think, is, for me, too large for something I want to, manually lug around and have to put up on a tripod and stuff like that, even though it's small and compact. How much does this thing even weigh? We look the mass up on this. Gross weight. 23.5, almost 24 kilograms. That's quite heavy. So for me, this is too big for something you want to move around. This, like, when we get up to 12-inch aperture, for me, we are moving into observatory sizes, or at least permanent installation size of aperture. And if you're doing permanent installations, do you still really want something that fast? I mean, sure. I mean, it's nice to be able to collect light that fast, but usually when you have permanent installations, it's because you have the time to take longer sessions, where if I have a mobile rig that I take with me and out and I have to sit next to it all night while it takes its pictures, then I actually like to go with a slightly faster. But I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. But overall, it's a thing. It's out. If you have all the money in the world, you can buy yourself a very, very fast astrograph. Now, for something that I actually find extremely interesting, because this is going to be a theme you're going to be seeing, I think, a lot more. It's going to be a prediction here. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this kind of stuff here in the future. Now, at first glance, you will look at this post here from JTW Astronomy. Now, if you don't know JTW Astronomy, it's a British company. They make various little controller boards for, basically unstepped controller boards for telescope mounts, but I think the product they're most known for is, of course, this. The Trident GG. This is, of course, a very, very beefy mount, and this is a absolute beast. You can see it here. When people run this, they often run it because they want to run something silly like this, where they're running basically triple setup, so they can run both RGB at the same time. Maybe they can run all triple narrowband filters at the same time, same target. Boom, go. This thing is stupid, right? So the mount itself is 30 kilograms with a payload of 75 kilogram payload. It is stupidly big and heavy and has a insane carrying weight. So yeah, this is probably one of the things that they're most known for. But these guys are now partnering up with a company that I've never heard of called Monster Astronomy Design, which is a new UK-based company dedicated to developing next-generation astronomy product. Never heard of the guys, but it could be fun to investigate. They're abbreviated to MAD. But what they're doing is they're making a strain wave mount, but going with the whole idea with these guys that they like to make these very, very heavy, we're now seeing a strain wave drive mount with a payload capacity of up to 40 kilograms without counterweights. 40 kilograms without counterweights. I mean, I would assume it could do 50 or 60 with counterweights if it even does it. But that's not why I'm featuring this. The reason why I found this to be interesting is the second thing here, the anti-grav robotic polar alignment. I've seen people talk about this on cloudy nights and stuff like that. It's like, why are we still, like, everything else is automated. We can change filters automatic. We can do, everything is automated. The one thing that is not automated yet is the polar alignment. We still have to sit there and turn our little knobs in order to polar align it. Why has nobody made a mount? And the last time I was looking at forum threads about this topic on cloudy nights, people were saying, oh, it's because it's going to be too expensive and nobody's going to want to spend that much money for something, which I don't think is an argument in astronomy. For astronomy gear, people are spending stupid money on things when it comes to astro gear. So of course there's going to be somebody that wants to pay for it. I'm absolutely certain there's a market for automatic polar alignment. So these guys are doing it. They are doing robotic polar alignment. And what of course that means, as you can see if we look at the base of the mount, there are no knobs. There are nothing for you to turn. There's nothing for you to screw on. It does it automatically. Basically, somehow it needs to communicate with the rest of the thing with the camera, and then it's going to be able to do its usual thing. I assume it takes a picture, turns, take another picture, maybe turns again, takes 2 or 3 pictures, and then of course, just as we're used to with our polar alignment, it tells us exactly how many degrees to one side to the other side does need to go. But now it can just do it with small motors that's going to just turn those knobs for us, so we get a spot on polar alignment every single time. It's really interesting, and the reason why I'm actually going to change my no, actually, is that the next thing? Hold on, I'm missing something here. Am I missing something? I am missing something. But that's okay. We can just jump over to the next one then, because I'll go and find that. which was, now that we are talking cloudy nights, which is also a new mount that has been announced from ML Astro. Now, some of you guys may know ML Astro. They also make, I think they're more of a budget brand of mounts. They make relatively cheap harmonic drive mounts, and I assume other stuff too. But they make relatively cheap mounts, and they have announced their ML Astro SLA 66 mount. And so far we just have some 3D renderings. And if we look at the 3D renderings, we can they also list some stats for this year. This is also one of those heavy duty, they call this, I think somewhere in there, they call this also a observatory grade mount. And we're moving into to mounts that are so big that they're probably going to be permanent installations. Yeah, so they talk about they're just using bigger stepper motors now than they used to. So this one is targeting 30 kilograms without counterweight and up to 50 kilograms with counterweight. So again, if we look at the other one here, this was 40 kilograms. So that's kind of in between the two. But ML Astro is now going 30 with and 50, 30 without and 50 with. But the reason why I wanted to highlight this, because again, everybody and their dog is making these harmonic drive mounts, is if we look at the rendering, you see here, do you see what's sitting right there on the polar alignment knobs? That looks not like something you're going to be turning with your hands, and in fact, no, it is not. There we go, a true observatory grade, zero shift, blah blah. But you can see here, ML Astro Robotic PA. So once again, we are seeing that for these bigger, heavier mounts, that we're beginning to see robotic polar alignment beginning to pop up as a feature. You can see it again here, these boxes, and these are optional extra. They say here the mount without the robotic kit is 10 kilograms, and then you can have that as an optional extra so that the thing can automatically polar align. You also see prices here. I don't know when this is going to be. Actually, pre-order is planned for summer 2026. First batch shipped planned for the autumn of 2026. Okay. I just think it is super interesting that we're beginning to see robotic polar alignment being a thing. I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that is just going to be the next big thing, right? Now we've had this wave of harmonic strain wave drive mount that has taken the Astro community with, well, everything today is just harmonic strain wave drive mounts. Back then, I think for observatory grade is still mostly dominated by either Alt-Azimuth or still German equatorials. But we're beginning to see the harmonic mounts now moving up into the observatory grade of payload, where we're looking at 30, 40, 50 kilograms of payload. And with that, we're also beginning to see some more expensive features, and I would expect that what we're going to be seeing over the next probably year or two is that those features with robotic polar alignment is going to begin to trickle down into smaller and smaller mounts. I wouldn't be surprised if we all of a sudden saw a mount from ZWO where they made a AM5P because it has automatic polar alignment built into it, and then the ASI, you can do everything automatic in there. So just as we have autofocus with a one click and it autofocuses your telescope, we are now going to get auto polar alignment, one click, things polar aligned. I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be a thing we're going to be seeing over the next years, and I'll probably be keeping an eye on this technology, and especially when because both of these mounts that we're looking at now, of course, are announcements. These are not launches. They're just announcing that they are going to be doing this. You can also see here that these open up for orders on May 1st. But of course, as I said, these are just announcements. So it's going to be really interesting to see when we actually get these mounts into the hands of reviewers and see if that whole automatic polar alignment is a gimmick or if it's actually something there's some value in. I have seen a product on the market already though. I forgot who made it, which is annoying, but I have seen a product on the market that essentially just is a plate that you put in between your your pier or your tripod and your mount. So it's just another like things. It's basically like imagine it's a short like pier extension, right? And you put in that had built-in automatic pole alignment. So I have seen it as a product, as a standalone product you put underneath your mount. I have not yet seen it built into mounts, which I think is the way to go. Okay, there was something I was missing. Oh yeah, we were talking. I know I had this open at some point. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, I probably closed it by accident. Then I'm just going to reopen it for you guys, because we were talking about smart telescopes in the beginning. There has been another smart telescope that has been announced. This is from a company called Veonis, and they have announced their Hyperion smart telescope. Calling it a smart telescope, though, is it's maybe doing smart telescopes a bit of a disservice, because this is closer to a smart observatory, which is also what they're calling it. And I'm just going to mute the audio in here. A professional observatory. So basically what these guys are doing is they have made this. This is we can find the price tag in here somewhere. Where's the price tag? Come on. Here you can see it. It's essentially just a pier with a telescope sitting there on the side. And it costs, come on, where is it? All-in-one smart observatory, starting at $99,000. You need very, very deep pockets if you want to play around with this. Now, this, of course, is not aimed at the average consumer market. If you were quick, they briefly show here what kind of use cases they think this would be good for. This is the kind of stuff that they're planning to sell to museums, to any, like, maybe a university, maybe anything like that, where like people want a permanent installation that's easy to use, where you can just control everything from a tablet, single unit. Again, if you're doing a lot of public outreach stuff, this could be a great thing. It's not something you're going to be moving around a lot. I think it's basically something you're going to be putting in as a pier somewhere where the telescope is just mounted to the side, and now you can just control everything on the side. I think it's interesting to see them going with smart telescopes in this direction. Without spoiling too much, you might be seeing some more content around this telescope and some of the other products from this company in the not too distant future. Still ironing things out, but I'll see what we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's the thing that has been announced. So if you happen to run a museum or know someone that has some money to burn and you want a very, very fancy telescope, then you can get one, or at least begin to talk to the guys from Veonis about their Hyperion telescope. Cool. I'm just going to go and double check. Okay, let me just jump over here. And we are going to move on, and we're going to see, I have actually a single software update I want to talk about. There's been a lot, but I just picked one out here from Cyril, where they have a new star removal script. If you remember last year, I did a video, was it in January? Maybe it was in January, I don't know. Maybe it was last year. I made a video recently about the new Verilux hypermetric stretch that was added into Cyril. There's been a lot more of these Verilux scripts added that does different things, but they've now also have this new star removal. It's basically just a competitor, not a competitor, but it does a lot of the same things as StarNet does. Allegedly, I haven't played with it, but allegedly it does it better. They say that it's better at handling stars of different sizes, so that even if you have, because sometimes I've seen that Starnet can struggle with if you have a very large, very bright star that takes up a lot of space, then sometimes it have a harder time getting the entire halo fitted correctly on it, because it doesn't really know when it gets too big. Is this nebulosity? Is this stars? Starnets can have some issues there. They say that this can do this a lot better. So it's going to be interesting to try and play around with, but it is something that's coming us already. Comes, so it hasn't been added yet, comes to Cyril in the not too distant future. But yeah, cool to see more of these capabilities being added into Cyril, and they've really been killing it lately, I think. So that's really, really cool, because I mean, Cyril is in my mind is catching up to PixInsight there yet, but with all these latest add-ons and new capabilities it has, it's definitely getting there. So it's gonna be interesting to see, especially because I think Cyril is a lot more user friendly compared to PixInsight. But I still feel like I can get a slightly better result out of PixInsight than I can with Cyril. And of course, also Cyril has the really big advantage of being free compared to PixInsight. So interesting to see, and I'll definitely be playing around with this when we get access to it. Okay. Okay, that just leaves me with the sky this month. We have 2 events that I decided to highlight coming up here in February. First of all, we have on February 17th, stop that. On February 17th, we have a total solar eclipse. Now, there's really few areas where you're going to be able to actually see it. We can see it here. If you want to see the total eclipse, you're going to have to go to Antarctica. You can see some in the southern part of Australia. You can get a partial eclipse, and the very, very southern tip of South America. But that's pretty much it. So I don't expect a lot of you guys are going to be able to see the solar eclipse, but it's going to be there. And if you happen to be in Antarctica, you can go down there and see it. 17th in 12 days. What is more likely you're going to be able to see is on the 3rd of March. I know it's not in February, but we're so close to the move over up, like at the beginning of next month, that I decided to include it here. And that is a total lunar eclipse. We're gonna have a total lunar eclipse, and here you can see again, it's a bit unfortunate position. It pretty much just covers most of the Pacific Ocean. But if you are on the west coast of the U.S., Alaska, you're gonna be able to see it. All of the US actually is going to be able to see it. You're going to have, of course, if you want the total eclipse, you're going to have to go to the west coast, but even east coast is going to be able to see it. Australia, pretty much, if you live in Australia, you're probably going to live somewhere on the east coast here. You're going to be able to get a full solar eclipse as well, and also part of Japan, part of China, this kind of area is going to be able to see it. Europe, of course, we don't get it. We can't see it from Europe, so it's mostly going to be for the US audience and probably also Australian. Okay, cool. Okay, that was what I decided to bring today. I really hope you found it interesting, and as always, of course, if you happen to stumble across a interesting piece of news, an interesting launch, a new product maybe that I haven't talked about before, I would really like if you would jump over to the channel's Discord server. I'll put myself over there instead. My channel's Discord server, you can see up here under the launch pad, there is, no, not in the launch pad, in the lobby, there is a Curiosity Orbit channel, and in here people will sometimes post when people spot new things. This was actually how I found out about the Dwarf Mini, because people were posting about it over here. So if you spot interesting launches, interesting news, things you think I should talk about in these live streams, then go ahead and post them over here. There should be a link below for the Discord server, so you can jump over and you can join the community, because this is a nice little community, friendly community. People ask questions, and I also going to be having a ton of questions we're going to be asking over there very, very soon. but it's going to be announced in 2 weeks' time, so I think week and a half maybe. But anyway, that is going to be it for today. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and clear skies and have fun.